Hey YouTube, it's your history teacher, Mr. Terry, back again with another History Teacher Reacts video. Today we're going to react something a little bit different, and that is a list. So I haven't really done this before on the channel here, but I thought it might be a nice little kind of change it up. Now there's listing videos and stuff like that. People do top whatever videos. I'm actually going to look at a list from the site Ranker. So let me show you what we are going to check out today. Now what we got here, and I found this one popped up and just some suggested feed. I was like, this might be cool. I think it could be something I could learn from and stuff. And here's what it is. The list is toughest of history's elite super soldiers. Okay? Toughest of history's elite super soldiers. So like strongest armies and stuff like that. And I'm interested to check out and see what they do. Now, from what I understand about Ranker, they'll have some author put together a bunch of candidates or something. And then you vote them up or vote them down, from what I understand. So this is after, I mean, I'm looking at the first one here, over 1,100 votes. So, I mean, that's a lot of people. And I don't know exactly what type of people go on like Ranker to do this stuff. Is it people that really know about it, or they just kind of read the information and do whatever? But regardless, power in numbers, right? So let's check out and see what, I guess, the public has deemed here the top elite soldiers in history. So it looks like right here we're starting with the Egyptian Mamluks. Now, if you have never heard of these people, you are not alone, and I would have been one not that long ago that would have been like that. I didn't learn a lot about the Mamluks until I started teaching college-level history classes. And where I remember a couple where I had originally kind of heard from them is they were one of the people that actually won against the Mongols, which is a very short group of people that have ever actually successfully done that. This marked the furthest west expanse that the Mongols ever did. They conquered through Persia, went through the Middle East, and then made their way into Egypt. But anyways, so yeah, where and when? So Egypt, we got 1250 BC. I think we will. Should we zoom in a bit? Let's do that. We'll zoom in a bit here. Okay. But anyway, 1250 to 1517. Now, what's interesting about these guys, too, is that they were originally they were Turkish slaves that came in and basically ended up militarizing and then actually took over Egypt and established their own Islamic Sultanate. And Cairo is going to be like you're seeing from here is going to be really made into the famous Cairo that we have here today, with a center of the Islamic world for that time. So interesting, you have this slave class turned into leaders, and yeah, they were very good. Let's look at what they use. They use the scimitar, which is a long, you can see them here, a long, slightly curved blade with a lightweight design that made it easier to use on horseback. Recurved bow, which came from Central Asia. You have groups like the Mongols that use that. It was smaller, compact, very hard to make, but you could actually use on horseback in like an English longbow. And then a lance, so it could be used on horseback or in ground combat. So a longer thing to be able to get at people at long distance, especially horsemen. Okay, so they put that was the bottom one they had here. So again, you can ask yourself, did it deserve to be on the bottom of the list? Looks like there's 14 here. Should they go up? Should they go down? What do you think? All right, let's move up. What do they got? The Persian Immortals. All right, ancient Persia. So, Achaemenid Empire. Persia is a very loose term, by the way. If you hear about Persia, there's not one group of Persians. There's Persia, which is like kind of like a territory, but there's a lot of different dynasties and empires that have conquered Persia and kind of been referred to as Persians. But these are the first of the big ones, the one that you think about when the Persian Wars with Greece, for example. So they were, they were called the Immortals, very cool, which the Persian Empire was the largest empire the world had ever seen. It hadn't even really been close before that, and won't be matched until Alexander conquers it, and then as well as other parts. But anyway, all right, so yeah, the Immortals, very cool. You hear about them, and when you hear about stories of like the 300 Spartans that they fought against some of these Immortals. So you're talking about most powerful military in the world and the elite amongst them. So it seems like pretty formidable. Let's look at their weaponry. So they use spears. That was the main weapon employed by Immortals. So they had a spear was held in one hand, allowing the other hand to hold their tightly woven wicker shield. So wicker shield isn't going to do too much. Maybe help up a little bit with maybe some arrows if they're not very strong, right? A sagaris, which is an ancient Iranian short-handled battle axe. Very cool. The recurve bow as well, which would have been adopted into that part of Central Asia as well. And then akanakates. And those are a double-edged iron sword. So pretty cool. They also put training in here. So the Mamluks, they're training. Again, they were slave warriors. Yep. So they're training. Let's see, at the age of 5, they were chosen to fight in the Persian elite. At age 15, they would finally be allowed to join the ranks of the Immortals. They would serve until they died or turned 50, whichever came first. So you're talking about, again, one of those groups where they start from childhood, which is exactly what happened. You're going to hear about that in other groups in history, too. They're lifelong soldiers. So makes sense they're good. Okay, so they're 13. So think that's good, or you think they should move up? All right, what do we got next? We got the Landsknecht. Man, look at these guys. Anyways, we're talking late Middle Ages here, if you even want to call it the Middle Ages here. So 15th, 16th centuries here. So they are, let's see, so we got famous, they're famous mercenaries, fought for various armies. So mercenary meaning they basically go to who's going to give them the better deal. And interestingly, they also put in here that they fought on both sides or against each other in a way. So some of the most famous mercenaries in history. So their arsenal was a pike and then a halberd, which is a two-handed pole weapon topped with an axe and a spike. You've seen those if you can imagine that. So a big long pole with an axe, and then at the top was a spike. So you could hit somebody with it and poke somebody with it, again, at length. So pretty neat. All right, so they were trained and began as an imitation of this from the Swiss Reislaufer. Man, sorry, my pronunciation sometimes can be pretty bad. All right, anyway, so you can kind of look at this. I will put a link, by the way, to this list in the video so you can check it out and see what you think of that. Okay, let's move up. What do they got? So that was 12th. Let's go to 11th. Aztec Jaguar Warriors. Awesome. The Aztec army was the best army in all of North America and created the biggest the biggest empire population-wise in all pre-Columbian history. So let's check them out. So Mexico, around 1400 to mid-1500s, basically until Hernan Cortez and the Spaniards show up, which they will die out. But anyways, let's see. So they conquered, Central and South of Mexico, and very powerful. So let's look at their arsenal. Okay, this is going to be a disaster for pronunciations. Macahuitl, a flat wooden club lined with obsidian blades. Remember, they did not have metallurgy in the Americas, so they didn't have metal weapons. The best thing they had was obsidian, which is extremely sharp. It's not, unfortunately, it's not very durable, which you can't make like a whole sword out of obsidian and think would snap. It would good for one hit, that's for sure, but then it would snap. But if you could, so like what they would do is, they would, I don't think it was like a glue or whatever it was, but they would put blades of obsidian on clubs, and you could really slice somebody up with that. So an atlatl, which is a javelin throwing spear, so they would throw those. Tepotzopili, thrusting spears with obsidian points. They had slings, that was their longer range weapon, made from cactus fiber. Very cool. And then, oh my gosh, I don't even want to pronounce the next one, but wooden clubs of varying lengths made of oak, and then daggers. Okay, smaller daggers there for hand-to-hand combat. So that's pretty good. So you can see they are limited to what they can use, but man, they were good at it. But obsidian, you're not going to fight somebody with an obsidian blade. That is going to hurt for sure. All right, their training. Let's look at their training. The Aztecs were warrior culture. The importance placed on warfare and combat was ingrained in their people from birth. Warriors were usually drawn from elite and noble classes. That's very common, that the warriors usually don't come from the lower class. Those families are too busy. They can't afford to have family members go and do full-time training because they need to work, because they don't make a lot of money. So nobles who have more free time for that, they can usually allow their kids to go into that kind of service. It happens somewhere nobles made up a fighting force in places with like knights in Europe or the samurai in Japan, that sort of thing there. So you couldn't be promoted to the rank of Jaguar illegal warrior, but a similar position until you'd captured at least 4 enemies alive and brought them back for ritual sacrifice. So you had to earn it by capturing them. Now, I don't want to go too much about the kind of the religion and how that ties into the culture of the Aztecs. We know human sacrifice is a big thing, and this army, they would conquer and get new territories as well as capture people for their religious sacrifices. So they were very important culturally for them as well. All right, but that's the Aztec Jaguar Warriors. Very cool. All right, we're in the top 10 now. The Zulu Impi. Okay, so we're Zulu. We're going Africa. We're also going a little more modern in this way. So Southern Africa, way down, close to the tip. Established by Shaka Zulu, one of the greatest African military leaders in all of African history. And, okay, so let's look at what they use. They use the Ikwa, which is a short stabbing spear invented to replace longer, less versatile throwing spears. Cool. Got a Iwisa, a club hewn from dense wood. Then you got a throwing spear and stuff. So a lot of spears, a lot of range stuff. I mean, you always have both, but yeah. All right, let's look at their training. Okay, began at age 6. Dang, again, that's so early. Think about what you're doing when you were 5 or 6, like these Immortals of Persia or a Zulu warrior, 5 or 6, and you're going into like training. So anyway. So they would do that. Let's see. Trying to see anything else. So yeah, a lot of drilling when they were younger, and pretty amazing. Okay, cool. So again, you can check out more of the information. The link will be down below. Okay, so they are at the 10 spot, Zulu Impi. Okay, let's move up. We've got the Maori Warriors. All right, going to New Zealand and Polynesia, kind of that area. So 1280 to the present day. Very cool. You still have a version, at least, of them, of that group still around today. So they used a patu, which is a brutal and devastating clubs made out of basalt, whalebone, and hardwood. Interesting. Whalebone, that'd be kind of light, which might be useful there. All right, so they also have a quarter staff and then a teardrop-shaped handheld weapon made of sharpened jade that could be used for slashing and bashing. And then they had a wooden paddle club ornately carved. That must be what this guy has up here. Very cool. Okay, their training. Like many cultures in which warfare and combat played a central role in their society, Maori began learning how to fight, wrestle, and use weapons as children, and formal communal training began in their teen years, where they sparred with paddled weapons. So that's pretty cool. So they would do the war dance, the haka, you might have heard of that, which was a way to, mentally and spiritually, they say, prepare for battles. You see that famously. You'll see like athletes that have done that, teams that have a lot of Polynesian, maybe ancestry. You might see them do it before like a football game or a rugby game. You see that pretty cool, pretty devastating to see this like war dance, especially if you're going to fight them. So anyway, okay, cool. All right, number 8. We've got Teutonic Knights. Okay, going to Teutonic Knights, so they are Prussian, all right, so from Central and Northern Europe, 1198 to 1389, so they're a big part of the Crusades, specifically, the Third Crusades. They were a member of the Catholic military in Prussia, right, so you had this order. They were fought in the Third Crusade, which was probably the most famous of the Crusades. And again, we're trying to capture Jerusalem and that sort of thing. It failed, right? The only crusade out of the 4 major ones that were in any way somewhat successful for the Christians was the First Crusade, but that was short-lived eventually. So, all right, so these guys, they used a Crusader sword, which is a long, straight-bladed, two-handled battle sword. So it's two-handed. Sorry, two-handed, not handled, handed. That's the big one. Okay, it would have been very heavy. Those things are heavy, man. And then they had a dagger, right, a small one, where you can fight up close, get into their other places. A mace, okay, very good. So let's see their training. Recruited at a young age and dedicated their lives to training. Took vows of communal poverty. Okay, so they were kind of seen as religious warriors, so they had to be upstanding Christians as well, if you can find those things compatible with being this brutal warriors and that, right? But anyway, that's kind of what was going on there. And we're not supposed to, have wealth and that kind of stuff, so which can be hard to do when you win a war. There's a lot of wealth to be had, so. Okay, cool. All right, so that was number 8. Let's see what's number 7. Number 7 is Celtic Warriors. Ooh, so we're going really old back here. So where and when? Britain, Ireland, and Central Europe from about 750 BC to 12 BC. So they included different other groups. Yeah, the Celts are just it's just a loose name. They're not like a big, necessarily organized society. They last centuries and across a whole continent. They just kind of referred to that way. They're smaller groups. I don't know if you were to like call that, if you were to go up to one of them and be like, "Hey, you're a Celt, right?" They'd probably be like, "Wow, what are you talking about?" So their arsenal: long swords, heavy straight-bladed, double-edged sword. That was was a weapon most associated with Celtic warriors. They used slings and lances. Pretty classic stuff there. You got your short, hand-to-hand, like closer combat. Then your range stuff. So their training. Celts were a warrior culture and were raised to appreciate the importance of combat. Young Celts looked to older warriors and veterans in their culture for inspiration and guidance. Many Celts trained to become mercenaries with the goal of being hired as private soldiers for warlords, including Hannibal. So Hannibal is from Carthage, so getting to recruiting them to fight the Romans, what that would have been. So they were constantly fighting the Romans over and over again. Okay. All right, let's move on. We are to number 6. Number 6 is the Apache Warriors. Ooh, okay, so we got some more Native Americans there. Southwestern United States, 1600s to 1920s. Although, I'd like to say an Apache people exist, but not really as their own nation as much. So much they conquered. The Apache was a nomadic people that lived in different parts of region known as Apacheria, right? Which spanned from western Arizona to eastern Texas, so kind of the Midwest in a way, northern Colorado down to Mexico, so the warmer parts of the Midwest there. So they, again, were famous for having to fight against white settlers that came out of the U.S. Army and putting up incredible fights. So what did they use? Bow and arrow, okay, a tomahawk, which is made from metal, bone, or sharpened stone. Very cool. So remember, you are talking a post-Columbian society, so they had a lot of those technological things that were brought over, like maybe some basic metallurgy and stuff like that. You got a war club. You also got a jawbone club. Very cool. Their training, the Apaches were renowned for their athletic endurance, and it was believed by many at time that young Apache men could run nearly 100 miles a day and climb both trees and entire mountains with ease. Makes sense. If you're a nomadic group in a harsh environment like this would be in America, you would have to be an incredible athlete to be able to do any of that, just to survive being nomadic that way. So, all right, awesome. Okay, let's move on. Top 5 now. Top 5 time. So you can think right now, take a prediction. Who do you think they're leaving out so far? We got top 5. So who have they not put in that you think will be in the top 5? Let's see what they got. Number 5 is the Roman Centurion. So basically the Roman military there, your full-time soldiers. So they lasted 750 BC to 476 AD, which is the official fall of a Western Roman Empire. So much they conquered. Obviously it's huge, one of the biggest empires in history as we know. So their weapons, they used the gladius, Roman short sword, right, 25 inches long and had a handle formed to that warrior's hand. Very cool. Pilum, which was a javelin. Okay, so you got your range stuff. And then also going to carry a dagger. So again, you got your medium, long range, short range weaponry there. Okay, joining the Roman army was a 25-year commitment. I have heard of that, which they come in very, very young. 25-year commitment. Then you get a nice retirement. From what I understand, it was pretty nice for a lot of the years with the Roman Empire. You got paid okay, which also was one of the things that made the Roman Empire fall, is how expensive their army was. Get a plot of land and stuff like that when you were done. So anyway, those hoping to join had to be physically fit, healthy, and strong to keep an army well-oiled machine. Soldiers would march 20 miles per day in full armor. We'll have to set up and take down camp each night and morning. Wow. Whenever they weren't at war, they trained for battle and combat formations in one-on-one sparring that helped build roads, shelters, and aqueducts in ever-expanding territories. So really, they're a service group as well. So constantly training. Or these guys, these groups fight in numbers that you grew up with years, and they were such good smaller groups that could fight like this. Okay, so Roman centurions. Okay. All right, what's up here? We got the Mongols, of course. Maybe the most fearsome army ever. So they ruled Mongolia 1206 to 1368. At least when we think of the Mongol Empire, really with Genghis and onwards, till the empire broke apart. So how much did they conquer? Taking over almost the entire continent of Asia, extending out into Eastern Europe, Siberia, Sea of Japan. Although they lost for multiple reasons. Japan, parts of Central Europe, and down in the Indian subcontinent, the Mongol Empire remains one of the largest contiguous land empires in the history of the world. They were the largest contiguous, meaning connected empire. The only empire to beat them in size would be the British, and that's not contiguous because they had colonies all over the place as part of their empire. So largest single connected empire was the Mongols. So their arsenal. Now we know they were masters of horseback. Basically, they said a lot of them they would be on horseback before they ever even learned had the ability to run, like you were going as an infant. Okay, so composite bows and handcrafted arrows. Okay, they did that. They had the small composite bow, which was extremely explosive, but small enough that you could do on horseback, and that's, of course, they were so good. But they also melee combat, a saber, one-handed curved sword. That was ideal for combat on foot and horseback. You had it curved, so it was easier to slice, a little bit quicker that way, especially there, because you don't want your sword to get stuck. You want it to slice pretty easily that way. And then a lance or spear, again, which is very useful for fighting enemies on horseback, because you need to be able to have that kind of spacing there. Okay, and their training. So they began at an early age, okay, enter the formal army in their early adulthood, and the formidable horde would run formation drills and practice diversionary attacks or tactics to have a wide variety of defensive and offensive measures that could be implemented against different enemies across various terrains. That was one of the big things about the Mongols. They could fight basically anywhere. Since they're nomadic, means you're already going to have hunting skills and bow skills, so that was obviously good. Tribal warfare amongst the Mongols was rampant until Genghis came around and unified them. So you already had basic survival and fighting skills to be up with them. Okay, hard to argue with that. The Mongols. Okay, we're top 3 now. What's going to be third? We got the samurai. We knew the samurai would be up here. So when and where? Okay, 10th century of Japan until the mid-19th century, so a good 800, 900 years almost. And, all right, so feudal daimyo. The daimyo are the lords, okay? They held different territories in Japan. They served under shoguns who defended the country against attempted Mongol invasions. So Mongol shoguns, if you don't know what those terms are. Japan has historically often had an emperor, but that emperor is more seen like a spiritual head, where the shogun, who is really in mostly control in Japanese history, the shogun is the supreme military commander. And kind of below them, if you want to think of it that way, are daimyo, who are lords. A very similar social structure to what, if you know about European structure. You got like a monarch, who has some power, but a lot of the power is with those lords. And here they're daimyo. But the shoguns, the daimyo serve the shoguns. And then the daimyo have... and are responsible for the warrior class, because they are nobles as well, and that, of course, is the samurai. So they are full-time soldiers that came from the noble class. So you have the katana, long traditional sword. Okay, we've all seen those before. They also have a short sword, so you got a long sword, a short sword, a curved blade, okay, on a wooden pole, so that's your pike, basically your pike for your longer distance, fighting against cavalry, stuff like that. And then you have a sickle-like blade weapon, which was attached to a chain for swinging. Kind of like, it almost sounds like a mace, pretty much there. So their training, okay, started at childhood, took place at designated school that emphasized physical fitness and agility, as well as Chinese studies and spiritual pursuits. Yeah, they did a lot of... it's almost like religious in a way for this. They have a strict honor code, which, like in Europe, they have like chivalry. Over here in Japan, you're going to have like Bushido. So it's an ethical code to protect the people, that sort of thing. Very, very strict. Very, very strict. It seemed a lot more rigid than what knights were doing. Okay, but more of a story for another time. Okay, top 2. What do we got? Number 2 is... Vikings, specifically Viking berserkers. Okay, cool. Okay, Vikings, Scandinavia, late 8th century to 11th century AD. The Viking clans aided on the battlefield by berserkers, expanded for centuries, establishing colonies throughout Scandinavia before sailing the Atlantic, creating settlements in Western Europe, North Africa, and parts of Eastern Europe. Yeah, they wanted better lands and stuff than the icy, frigid stuff of the far north. So Viking is also a term, by the way, that people wouldn't have probably identified with as much, because it's a lot of different groups. But anyway, okay, so they've got their sword, they got a durable steel, they have their battle axe, which they were known for, the iron battle axe, as well as spears. So the berserker thing is kind of interesting. If you don't know what berserker is, so a berserker training, it's there's all a myth around it, like they're saying here. And from what I heard, a berserker would take this, eat this thing or something. I don't know if it was like mushrooms or something like that, but they'd eat it, and it said it would mess up their brain. They would get, it says like a semi-hypnotic state, but they would become enraged, almost like some kind of I don't know, like a shot of steroids or something, like temporarily, that would make them not feel as much pain and would basically make them go. That's where we get that term berserk, like go crazy, aggressive, and strong that way. If any of you know a lot more about this, I'm interested in this because I've heard it brought up before. They don't really know what it was that they were taking or something like that. I thought I heard mushroom, like a mushroom type thing that would make them do that. All right. Okay. Very cool. So let's do number one. Now go ahead and take a second and think what has not been hit yet on this list. What do you think it's going to be? I have an idea. The Spartans. All right, the Spartan hoplites. Okay, so Sparta, Greece. You knew they were going to be on this list somewhere. Maybe they're not number one, but whatever the list, it's hard. They have a great case, and it looks like they got 4,000 upvotes for the Spartan hoplites. Okay, so Sparta, they're part of Greece, of course, largest city-state in Greece as far as area goes. So they would use a wooden spear. They also had a short sword with the phalanx. Phalanx is a almost human tank like style of fighting, very tight knit. Got their spears, they got their swords, they move together in unison. Very useful technique that lasted centuries, well beyond really the Sparta as we know it existed. Okay, the Kopis, we got a curved short sword for hacking and slashing, something you want to maybe not go as deep, but it's very quick. And then, of course, their shield, because there's a lot of close combat there. So their training, this has been very well documented and very famous about them. So when a male Spartan was born, he was inspected by a council of elders and left at the mount of the Baus of Taygetos to die if deemed unfit to fend for himself. I've heard of that story, too, where, like, if you have some deformed child, some weakly sick child, that said that they would basically yeet him off the mountain of Taygetos. And thus basically cleansing their society of any weaker people. But yeah, anyway, so age of 7, they start their training basically full time at that point and keep going. And there's a lot more you could talk about that. But when they're about 20, they're able to really kind of join the military then. And they actually still, once you become a professional soldier, you still live with them till you're at least 30. It's about 30 where you can get married, where you can start like, I believe living with your family and stuff like that, but you still like ate and hung around with all the soldiers because you are a professional soldier. And this way of life was made possible by the fact that they have an enormous slave culture. At its height, Sparta probably had 10 slaves to every Spartan citizen, which allowed them to have this large, basically all the men are pretty much professional soldiers of age, and allowed them to do that, which brings in a vicious cycle because the slaves were usually people that were conquered, and the more people that you conquer, the more militarily ready you have to be, because if you have a 10-to-1 ratio of slaves to people, you are constantly in a state of needing to worry and defend against a possible slave revolt. So you have to be in a constant state of military preparedness. So it's this vicious cycle that kept going on forever, but it's hard to kind of keep up that way. All right, well, that was number one. So Spartan hoplite specifically. So what do you guys think? What do you think is this list? Let's go ahead and go down one more time. What do you think? Go ahead and put yours in. You can take these 14 or so. Also, is there somebody missing on this list? But let's go through. Number 1 was Spartan hoplites. 2 was Viking berserkers. 3 were the samurai. 4 is the Mongol Warriors. 5 Roman Centurions. 6 Apache Warriors. 7 is the Celtic Warriors. 8 Teutonic Knights. 9 Maori Warriors. 10 Zulu Impi. Aztec Jaguar Warrior, number 11. 12 the Lanchnik. 13 the Persian Immortals. 14 Egyptian Mamluks. Wow. Okay, so I mean, my thoughts, I think Persians should probably go up a bit. I don't know enough about these dudes, to be honest. But mercenaries, come on. Aztecs, very deserving. Probably highest of the ones in the Americas. So you may be able to go up even higher there. The Zulu, good. I mean, they're not lasting as long, so that's hard to put that in there, especially really short-lived ones. Maori, good choice. Pretty good there. Teutonic Knights, good, except they lost a lot. So I don't know. Celts, pretty good. I mean, they lasted centuries, so probably deserving. Apache Warriors, again, hard to do, especially because they had to go up against a whole United States rather than these tribes, but that's a good one. Roman centurions makes sense. Mongols, absolutely. The top 5 are solid in my opinion. The top 5 are, I don't know if I would put anybody else in the top 5. I mean, that kind of nailed it. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I thought this was pretty cool. Let me know if responding and reacting, going through these lists together is something you'd like to see more of. I will leave a link to this list down below so you can, if you want to read more, and you can do your upvotes and downvotes, check that out, see if you agree with that stuff. And yeah, if you have anything to say about it, put it in the comments. Also, you can come over to our Discord server. Link is down below. You can head over there, get involved. I'm sure this will be something you'll get a lot of people to be able to discuss with. And you can join that too. Okay, links to other stuff down there too. Patreon, Teespring, all that stuff. And with that, we'll see you next time. Bye.